What's up, folks? How's it going? This is Avijit here, and welcome to DevOps Challenge Hub. So let's start with today's interview question. And today we'll have a few more questions on Fargate. And yesterday we have seen this demo, Fargate demo cluster. Uh, just quick recap on that, and after that we'll go into the interview questions. So what we did yesterday, we'll have just a very quick recap. So we created one Docker file. Okay, we created one Docker file, and that Docker file has only one image, Nginx image. Okay, create a folder for your app, then create a Docker file, added Nginx in the Docker file, build that image. So ideally, it should be like not. It will be like small task which will be running through this Fargate container. Task can be compress a file or convert image this PNG format to JPEG format. So user will go to your website, upload some image file, and a job will be queued. Maybe hundreds of users will come. They will upload some files. Your job will be queued, and then it will uh, and one another process. It will pick up the job from that queue and launch a Fargate container, process that job, and then terminate that job. So container will be running for some, maybe a short duration, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like that. After that, it will be over. But here I'm running Nginx for demo. It is not the task will be running, but this is very small example I have taken just for the demo. So build the image, then create ECR repo. I've created a ECR repo. ECR is just like a Docker hub for AWS. Then tag that Docker image to point to ECR, then push that image to ECR. So now your whatever image you have created, it's there in the Amazon ECR. Now you create a ECS cluster, and in the cluster you define the task, mention your Docker image, then image, Docker image name, port number, whatever memory and CPU you need, and then register the task. And finally, create the security group. You have to open some port number 80, right? Because web server you're running, and then run the task. So run the Fargate task. So this is what we are doing, and when we are hitting that IP address, we are seeing that Nginx page, welcome page. That's what we did yesterday. So now let's go to today's question. And as I said that Nginx is I have given just for example, but task will be smaller because that's where your advantage comes. It's a small task. Whenever user needs it, that time only you'll be running that task. That is how you have. That is how you have to design the whole system. You have to architect the whole system. Yeah, if you are running the server continuously, it's no point. You can go as well as uh, uh, EC2 container, right? EC2 instance. Why do you are running container? Because you want to run it for shorter duration, not for a long duration. So that way you have to design. When user hits your web address, you have to serve user and run the container. You show the web page or you show the web page will be shown maybe like for that you are running maybe EC2 container or EC2 instance. But for a task like processing the file, compressing the file, zipping the file, etc., you can do using this container or some other processing, whatever you can, business logic you can implement it. So, how do you implement persistent storage with Fargate? So, Fargate is a Docker container, and as we know that Docker, once it terminates, it's ephemeral. Everything is gone. If you write something inside it, it's gone. So, how do you store it permanently? Maybe you want to write some logs. So, for that, you create a EFS, Elastic File System. You create a EFS, go to EFS, Amazon Elastic File System, create file system, and once you create Elastic File System, then you go to a task definition and mention that. AFS system in task definition, you mention that. So create Amazon is AFS file system in the same VPC where you will be having your year running. It says this target container running. Then go to task definition, and then you have to give the allow this permission you have to give so that it can mount client write, disk write, mount target. This role should be policy should be defined, and permission should be added in the policy. After that, in the task definition, you mentioned that mention that mount point. This is the EFS volume, and you this container path you mount to your whatever EFS path. Right. Once you create the EFS, you will get a path, and that from the container path you mount it. And then you can create some log configuration, and so that you will be able to also see AWS CloudWatch log. Okay. So basically, like answer will be how do you share, how do you implement persistent storage in Fargate? Because it's a Docker ephemeral. Like once the Docker is gone, everything is gone. You cannot write inside it. So you can use EFS file system. You just in the task definition, you provide that path where you are going to mount it. So that's the answer. Next is explain how networking works in Fargate. So it's just like EC2. EC2, you have your own IP address, own elastic network interface. Similarly, you have your each task gets its own IP address and ENA, private IP address, ENA, elastic network IP address, and it's like a EC2 in your VPC. Similarly, this task is in your VPC. So its the behavior will be networking will be work exactly similar way, and you create subnet security group, root table NSL, and open the port. Your task is listening to port number 50, let's say, or port number 80 or 8080. Open that port in your security group. Right. And if you want to connect to internet, you use public IP and public subnet, public IP and public subnet. And if you want to connect to internet through private, use private subnet and NAT gateway. Private subnet and NAT gateway. So it's just like EC2. So how you handle networking in Fargate, it's just like EC2. You get your IP address, you get your elastic network interface. It will be like VPC. You will have subnet, security groups, and root table and SL. How do you troubleshoot Fargate task that fails to start? Your Fargate task is not starting. Here it's running, but for some reason it's failing. So what will you do here? So one thing is like you can go to log like CloudWatch logs and you can see what's happening. Then you can see the task definition file, whatever Docker content and Docker image you have given, whether that image is correct, whether image exists or not, right? So there are things, CloudWatch logs, describe the task. You can call AWS describe task to see any error message, right? What kind of error message is coming? So describe the task and see the error messages. Any role issue, permission issue is there, and whether you're able to pull the image or not. So in the task definition file, you have defined the image. This is the image I want to use. So check the log, describe the task, IAM role permission check, and image pool you can check, and networking also whether you have opened the port or not, required port or not, DB port or not, if you have DB connection. So those things you can check. So there are the 5 points: log, describe task, IAM role issues, image pool failure, whether the image path is correct, ARN is correct, and check networking whether port number you have opened in the security group or not. So what are the best practices for optimizing Fargate cost? So best practice, right size task. If you ask developer what kind of CPU and memory is required, if he says like 2 CPU, 4 GB, give that, but don't give like 8 CPUs and 16 GB. So that you see that right size by default, like everywhere you are putting 8 CPU, 16 GB. It's not be like that. Right size task based on the task consumption. Don't over provision. And then you can go for spot Fargate and then monitor the usage. Sometimes what happens, the task hung, process hung, and it's not stopping. So ideally, let's say you are zipping a file. It takes 5 minutes, but for some reason it's hung. So your task is running continuously. And if you are not monitoring, a whole 5 days, 6 days it's running. So it will cost. So you have to monitor. You know that in 10 minutes it should stop. If you can watch the log, if it's more than 10 minutes, you should get some alerts. It should notify you so that you know that there is something wrong, because you know that maximum it takes 10 minutes. Then why it's running for 3 hours, 4 hours? Maybe that process and it's not able to come out of it. So monitor the usage, shut down the idle task, right size a task, auto scale. When the requirement comes up, you auto scale, task auto scaling. So there are the some ways you can reduce the cost. How do you implement logging and monitoring for Fargate? Yeah, logging monitoring. It's just like EC2, as I said, like EC2 enable logging, and by default some data are captured in CloudWatch. and you can enable detailed monitoring. In CloudWatch logging definition, also enable, you can add a log configuration, right? In the task definition, you can add that log configuration block, and to use the AWS log driver, and each task sends logs to a specific log, and then you go to CloudWatch and see the log. Then you can use CloudWatch metric, CPU memory usage, and you can generate some alert. And then for further insight, you can use AWS X-ray and Grafana Prometheus data. So you will be using CloudWatch, and you can monitor the CloudWatch metrics. So that is how you will be implement logging and monitoring for Fargates. And extra logs, if you want some other logs, that also you can mount EFS, and you can capture more logs if you want. All the logs, then you can aggregate into a server, and you can run Splunk, and you can see the data. You can get some view. Okay, that can be hundreds of tasks. They are like dumping data into shared that elastic file storage, and you use that as a data source for your Splunk or any other dashboard, and you can have more better. You can have your customized dashboard. Explain how to use Fargate with VPC endpoint for private connectivity. Let's say you are running this Fargate in your private network, and you don't want to go to a public network to fetch S3, because S3 is inside the AWS network. So you create a VPC endpoint, and in the route table mention that if request comes, it should go to the VPC endpoint. So if you are downloading some file in your container from AWS S3, then it will directly go through VPC endpoint to AWS S3. So it won't go through public internet. So through AWS network, it will go. So that way, you will save cost of your NAT gateway. NAT gateway and internet gateway cost. No need for NAT gateway or internet gateway. And it's a secure, low latency access to AWS service in private environment. So this is what you can do. Create a VPC endpoint, run Fargate task in private subnet, and other proper IAM rules and route tables. So this task now communicates directly over AWS internet network. No need for NAT gateway or internet gateway. So these are all these things we have discussed VPC, NAT gateway in my earlier interview question. So if you have not gone through, please go through previous one. Go one by one from beginning to end. AWS playlist, first video to the last video. I'm following as per the concept basic to advanced. So follow that series from basic to advanced. Okay, and let's go to quiz section today. Whatever we have discussed, we have some quiz. So what you can do, you can pause the video and you can try to participate and try to answer. Let's go to the quiz section. Okay. So how can you implement persistent storage for a Fargate task? Yeah, as we discussed that not EBS volume or S3, it's a EFS, and mount it via task definition. Persistent storage for a Fargate task. And yeah, definitely S3 you cannot mount as a file system. S3 you can upload files, but you cannot mount it. You cannot do write on that disk. Use AFS and mount it via a task definition. Which networking mode is used in AWS Fargate per task? So this is AWS VPC. AWS VPC mode is used. So if you see that task definition file, network mode is AWS VPC. Right? We mentioned CPU memory and container path, and then mount points. Okay, so that's it for today. Hope you like this video. Please like, subscribe, and share my YouTube channel, and also follow my page Devops Challenger. I post quiz contest daily. You can participate in that, and you can also follow my WhatsApp channel. And please fill up this talent database which I have created down below in the comment section. So I'll be sharing some details based on the requirements from the recruiters. So please fill it up. And thank you for watching this video. See you again in the next video.